last year with COVID, students didn't see much job potential when all the gyms and YMCA's were closed. So we've been hit hard on trying to build our program back up.
Yeah,
It's not easy.
that is actually, I was gonna ask you this, but I mean, I don't know if you saw, I think I told you that um, Dr. Robert Salas had actually referenced you. Did you see this goes to like the importance of the physical activity field. I don't know if you saw one of his more recent papers. It was, I can send it to you too. I had it right
Oh,
here.
that'd be great. Yeah, I like Bob Salas. He's awesome.
Yeah, when I was talking to him, he said, you gotta talk to Dr. Wescott. I was like, I have,
Yeah, that's
but
nice.
his was physical inactivity as associated with higher risk for severe COVID-19 outcomes. And it was a study of 48,444 of their patients. They asked all their patients an exercises medicine question, just every patient that comes in, how often are you doing physical activity? And the odds ratio of being hospitalized or dying from COVID was, they were 2.5 times more likely to die from COVID if you weren't meeting the physical activity recommendations compared to those who were meeting the physical activity recommendations. I feel like that's a relatively compelling argument for the necessity of this field.
Wow, that is
Yeah,
excellent news. Thank you.
yeah, I'll send that over to you. But
Great, thanks.
I mean, so yeah, some of the things that I wanted to pick your brain about too definitely was like, going to be one of those things. So how do we get with all that information that we have, how are we going to get more people to do things? You and I occupy that resistance training niche. So I don't know, what can we do to get more people to meet those recommendations, or what's in your experience?
Great question. We One of the reasons Bob and I usually get along so well is that in the old days, most of my research studies were on strength training variables and sets,
Yeah,
single versus multiple and slow speed, fast speed, um, frequency of training, free weights versus machines, all those different things, high reps, low reps, whatever it might be. And I said, that's good stuff. And I'm glad I'm doing that. But how many people really care about that compared to all the people out there that are not strength training and should be? Now, I've seen some new numbers on the participation rates, but the one that I um, go by the most is one by the CDC a few years ago that showed that when you actually put accelerometers on people to see if they meet the ACSM AHA guidelines of 30 minutes, 5 days a week at 3 minutes, which is not very, very high. It's like walking at 2.5 miles per hour you
yeah,
can do it in 3 10-minute segments. That people your age between 20 and 60, there were 3.5% of Americans that hit that number. That's really low. At my age, over 60, it was even lower, about 2.4%. So what I decided to do years ago is, okay, let's focus on motivating and educating people the need for strength training. Well, that was just aerobic exercise. Far more people do aerobic exercise than do strength training. So those numbers may be skewed for some reason. Maybe more people do strength training 3 days a week, but they're not doing 5, or people do exercise 3 days but not doing 5. And so there could be a lot of variables. But we've decided to do research on areas that seem to affect the majority of people who need to do exercise. And we've looked at people with osteoporosis and shown, along with many other people, of course, that strength training is very good for maintaining your muscle mass and your bone density. And it's an important thing to do to prevent the issues related to osteopenia and osteoporosis. More recently, our last 6, if you count the one we tried to do this year and failed because of COVID, just lost most of our participants, don't have enough subjects to write up. But we had 5 that we have written up, and they've been published in pretty good journals. Um, we, we're looking at strength training as a means for reducing body fat, i.e. weight loss, which about 70% of Americans, actually probably more than that now, but this was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association a few years ago. We're dieting at any given time to try and lose weight. But about 95% of those, based on Barbara Brem's research, about 90% based on other studies, regain all the weight they've lost. So it's kind of a cycle. It doesn't work too well. So we looked at strength training as a part of the, diet, endurance exercise complex, and found that in several successive studies with a lot of subjects at this point, not only were they able to lose a significant amount of weight, about as much as any of the other studies, not quite as much on the scale, but the reason for that was they were losing more fat,
Yep.
but gaining muscle.
Yep.
And so in the 6-month study, they lost 14 pounds of fat and gained almost 4 pounds of lean tissue, which most of that would be muscle in older and adults and older adults. So that was good, but every study works for losing weight. So we had a follow-up in an ACSM affiliate journal, the Journal of Clinical Exercise Physiology. We published a 6-month follow-up. And of all the hundreds, if not thousands, of diet studies and hundreds of weight maintenance studies, weight loss thousands and weight maintenance hundreds, only 5 that I'm aware of have shown a sustainability of that weight loss for 6 months. Usually it's 6 months. We did a 6-month and a 9-month follow-up. But 2 of those were psychological studies. My good friend Jim Anesi down in Atlanta did probably one of the best. He spent $400 per person on psychological counseling. The Oxford study in England, they spent $4,000 on psychological counseling. Wow. And then, of course, oh my gosh, drawing a blank, but the big study, what's the name of it, out of Rhode Island, where the weight loss registry.
Oh, yeah.
They kept records on people, and they did a great job, but they're putting in typically an hour of walking or other endurance activity every day. And for a lot of people, that just wouldn't be doable. I guess, just they're too busy to really spend a whole hour, or they don't want to spend a whole hour. So I'm not knocking it. That's great if you can do it. But our people spent 20 minutes of strength training, 20 minutes of endurance training, twice or 3 days a week, got similar results with both. And we have in all of our studies, even the studies with thousands of subjects, we had that similar result. And they also maintained their body weight. They didn't have a significant gain in body weight for 6 months or even 9 months. They did gain a little bit. All the studies gained a little bit. Yep. It was not significant, but our people actually, because they continue to have a higher protein intake and they continue to do their twice or 3 day a week strength training, strength and endurance, they actually added over 3 pounds more lean weight, muscle weight in the next 6 months. And they actually lost 1.5 pounds of fat. But when you put that together, they gained 1.5 pounds on the scale, but it was a 4.5 pound improvement in their body composition. No other studies ever shown that. Not that we're better than any other study, but it was a unique approach, because most people say, well, I don't want to do strength training. That's going to make me bigger. I'm trying to get smaller. It's going to make me heavier. I'm trying to get lighter. And they don't understand that. No, it's simply replacing the muscle you've lost over the aging process. That's average about 4 to 6 pounds in the midlife years, and much more than that, 8 to 10 after menopause and in the 60s. So we've been focusing on issues that we think are important to people. And most of the people that have been in our studies, and you're not going to believe this, but we asked them how many diet programs we've already done. So, I'm really good at this. I've done 10. So why are you here? Yeah. So I was getting the way back. I don't have the willpower. So it's not the willpower, it's your muscle physiology. You're losing muscle, your metabolism slows down. And you go back to normal eating, what used to be the right number of calories is now far too many. So we are addressing, in my later years, we're addressing issues that we think would work better with average people, just getting them into any type of strength training that, that's sensible, not something crazy, but not so much working with the athletes and the bodybuilders, the professional football teams that we used to do, those type of things. They've got plenty of great people doing great research, far smarter than I am. But just trying to get average people to know, hey, this is really helpful for a variety of reasons. So we've done arthritis studies and osteoporosis studies and weight loss studies and weight maintenance studies. Let's see, what else have we done? But those type of things that affect a lot of adults and older adults. And then probably Dr. South liked my paper that I did for the ACSM journal. What's it called? It's the big research journal.
Medicine and Science and Sport and Exercise. Is that? Well, I think your one of your most cited ones is Resistance Training is Medicine.
No, it's one that you'd never even hear because you have to be invited to write for it. It only goes to limited
Oh,
people. I don't know why, but it's called, um, oh, that's not it. Hold on. It is called, it's American College of Sports Medicine, Current Sports Medicine Reports.
mhm.
Current Sports Medicine. And I don't get it. I don't know how you even do get it, but you know, it did go to mostly it's medical professionals that read us. Sort of like a lot of journals. One journal we used to write for, and I can't write for anymore, was Physician Sports Medicine. One of
Mhm.
my very first studies on this whole thing, we had some MDs working with me on this, and from Harvard, and also probably the leading orthopedic surgeon in the country, Nick Danubli, down in Philadelphia. You know, on the nutrition and the strength training and the higher protein strength training, basically. And this was called the Physician Sports Medicine. And I used to write for them, you know, occasionally, and they're great journal. Recently, I asked them, if would you like another article? I have one, and they said, no, we can't use you anymore. We only write for medical professionals from medical professionals. So I said, that's not me. So
Yeah.
I couldn't do that anymore. But this was a good one, and I hope I sent that to you. It had about 300 references. They had me cut it down to I think 150. But it has a lot of references. It's a little old now, but it's still not out of date because the things still apply. Resistance training is medicine. It was under that section, and the effects of strength training on health. So that's what we've been focusing on. We've also done psychological studies with Dr. Nessie
Mhm.
on strength training because there are a lot of people, older people, who are not just depressed, but have all kinds of other issues that lead up to that, body image issues as well as just lifestyle issues and self-concept, et cetera. So we've always found, every study we found out that's been very effective. So what we're doing is trying to either do our own studies or do papers or articles in places that people actually read. And that's the most fun, really, when they actually read it, to let people know that strength training is not a bad thing. It's a really good thing. And it's not that you're trying to build muscle, because everybody's afraid of building muscle. I'd love to build muscle.
Yeah,
Most people are
right.
afraid of building muscle. But we say, no, it's rebuilding the muscle that you don't even know you're losing during the aging process, because your scale weight goes up as you add more fat than you lose muscle. But you need to keep your muscle mass up, keep your metabolism up so you don't put on the fat, and keep your bone density up, those type of things. So that's where what we're trying to do to encourage people to do strength training.
Yeah, you had it was one of the columns for the American Journal of Sports Medicine, whereas you might stay the same weight that you were when you were 30 if you're 60, but that doesn't mean that your BMI is accurately reflecting your body composition, because you could be losing some muscle and gaining some fat. And so even if you're still 160, then that doesn't mean you're the same 160 you were when you were 30. Um, and you had a paper, I think it was, what's the minimum dose of strength training? And I read something in the intro, and in the intro, it was following 6 months of resistance training participation with an average age of 68, they showed a mitochondrial density similar to persons with a mean age of 24. And I was actually blown away by that.
That wasn't my study. That was a really good study. That was a study up at probably the best studies in this area and most other areas come from McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, with
Mhm.
Stuart Phillips and uh, Mark Tarnoplowski and that whole group. I'm pretty sure they're the ones that did that study. I know they are. And yeah, they were looking actually at mitochondrial content, and
Yeah.
6, I think that 3 days a week, 2 sets of the basic exercises, and the 68-year-olds mitochondria content was, and they looked at actually about 180 genes that related to, um, muscular health, I guess, muscular conditioning, muscular health, muscular fitness. And they said, hey, they were indistinguishable from the 24-year-olds who didn't strength train, but were still, hey, 24 years old.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
your age,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, I'm a little older than that now, but yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
That
And what's your body weight? You look like a great runner still. You still run well?
do I look like a runner? Oh my goodness. We were just in Utah. We probably hiked about 10 miles a day, but no, I'm getting my way back. I actually am going to do a 15K in a little bit, but I would say I mostly do strength training.
Good
So
for you. We look like a
yeah.
straight train runner. But you know, you look like, you remind me of a good friend of mine. He's way before your time, but I still think he was the greatest miler of all time. That was Jim Ryan. I don't know if you ever heard of Jim Ryan, the first high schooler to break 4 minute mile,
Oh
and
wow.
silver medalist in the Olympics. He would have won the gold, except that those Olympics were held at Mexico City. And at that time, the second greatest runner in the world was Kip Keino from Kenya. And of course, he lived at like 7,000 feet. So he never beat Jim before, but he beat him in the Olympics. But
Oh
Jim
wow.
Ryan was one of the greatest runners. And he had your wide shoulders. He this is back in the 70s, 60s, and 70s. And he was strength training back then when most other runners weren't, which is one reason why he did so well. His other rival, who you actually do look just like, was a very handsome fellow
Thank you.
that I actually ran against from Villanova when they were the powerhouse in the world in terms of distance runners. And his name was Marty Lagore. He was the second high school runner to break 4 minutes. And he actually beat Jim a couple of times. Jim beat him most times, but he was a great runner. My first race at Penn State in college, back then they had freshmen, thank God, because I wouldn't have made the varsity. But
Yeah.
at that time, for one race, I was the number one freshman at the team. That lasted one race. And our first race against Villanova, and we went down to the big park in Philadelphia to run the race. And my coach is a little guy, he's kind of eccentric guy, great guy, but eccentric. He says, "Wescott," he says, "this is their first runner. It's their best runner. You're our best runner. You're going to stay with him step for step, stride for stride." And I said, "Coach, that's Marty Lagore. He ran a 3:59 mile in high school." He says, "Oh, yes, that's right. Well, I want you to see him. I want to be sure you can still see him at the finish line." I said, "I can do that." It was a long finish, you know. So,
That's
but
incredible.
no, you do look like a fabulous athlete. It's good to see you in person.
Yeah,
Wow.
we have lots of, we'll have to catch up in person at some point too.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I didn't mean to take time on that here. Yeah, we
No, that's
continue.
totally fine. What was you, I mean, I appreciate it. You gave me all these compliments that I was looked like an athlete. I'll take that. Yeah.
Yeah, you sure do.
It was what yes, that one wasn't your studied but I think you had something on what was the minimum dose of
Yeah,
resistance
we did
training.
that with some really good researchers, James Steele, James Fisher from England, and
Yeah.
their team. Yeah, they included me in that article, and it was a very well written article. They get all the credit for that. I helped a small part, but I take very little credit for that. Yeah, no, they did a nice job. That's had a lot of hits. It's really done well. Yeah.
What you said, so you said, I guess if we're talking like about older adults and getting them involved in strength training, and maybe one of the hesitations would be, I don't want to gain weight, but how do we break down the barriers to entry? Because that's like the first step, right?
Yeah, it is. I think, that's a very good question, Justin. I think one answer to that, I've been trying to get the medical profession to this for decades, not just years, decades, is let's have an emphasis on body composition. It's so simple to do. You have a little pair of skin full calvers.
Yeah.
It takes 2 minutes. Just do 2 or 3 sites. It's not perfect, but
Yep.
so much useful information than just body mass index, which is like the issues with that, just height and weight. You say, oh my goodness, hey, your weight's not that bad, but you're talking about a male, you're 20% body fat, and you really want to be down to 15%. Let's show how you can do that. And it's not just that you've added too much fat. You're only, you take the opposite side and say you're only 80% lean, and you should be 85% lean. You've lost muscle and bone, and here's how you get it back. And here's a little video, or here's a little booklet, or here's a little pamphlet on some exercise you can do, or why don't you stop at your YMCA or fitness center and just learn how to do it. You don't always have to be there. You can do it at home if you want to, but learn from someone, or go to Justin, or read someone's books, or do whatever.
Yeah.
That's one thing, I think, just to make people aware of body composition. And if doctors don't want to do it, at least make them aware of it, and say you can usually get a body composition at a local YMCA or a fitness center. We do it for free for anyone that wants to get a body
Yeah.
composition. You don't even charge them to do that. I say, no, get it. So we can now help you to get where you need to be, because I think you're going to realize that even though your weight's okay, or even though the weight's only 20 pounds overweight and you think that's not too bad, you really have a lot more fat than you think, because you have a lot more muscle than you think.
Yeah. There is I might butcher this parable, but it's like a public health parable, the upstream parable, where these two guys keep fishing people out of a river because they're drowning. And then all these people keep coming down the river, they're drowning. And then one of the guys leaves and he goes up the stream. And the other guy's like, well, what are you doing? He's like, I'm going to see who the hell's throwing all these people in the water and beat them up or something like that. And so it's like, well, why? I've always been like, why is there not an exercise professional or a handful at every single hospital? If a doctor has 5 minutes to talk to somebody, like that's catching them kind of like downstream. But how do we actually get them right off the bat? Like, you come in, you learn how to do all of these things. I just don't understand why that position doesn't exist. It would save so much money. And
That's brilliant.
I don't know. Yeah. I just don't know why that's not really a thing.
That is absolutely brilliant. No one's ever said that before. They take that just a little different step. Instead of at the hospital, most people, in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, at least see their primary care physician once a year for an annual checkup. And they get their cholesterol and their blood sugar and their PSA and all those things, blood pressure, of course. Why not have a little office while you're waiting to see your doctor with an exercise physiologist there, says, hey, we're going to do these. We'll do your body weight, your body composition. We can do your blood pressure, boom, boom, boom. So you can go right in, and the doctor won't have to spend as much time with you, so they can make more money, because they only give you, like I said, 15 minutes or 30 minutes. Yeah. I get 30 minutes a year, but usually most people get 15. And you have all this information that you can just take right into your doctor, because you're going to believe him more than you're going to believe me as an exercise physiologist. But at least you got the information.
Yep.
Yeah, be proactive. Wow, that's brilliant. I'm going to steal that.
You can steal.
I'll give you full credit for
it. It should be. Maybe we can write a paper. But I mean, that was kind of what part of my research was. I designed a program that was digitally based, and you just sign up. It's easy access to it. You learn how to do strength training, and then you have access to all the materials to do it on your own, in your own home. But that, at the doctor's visit, that would be, you get all this information that potentially could serve to motivate you if you find out there's a discrepancy between how healthy you thought you were and how healthy you actually are. And then here's the first step. So that would be
great. You can have a little, like some little fitness testing equipment there. You can do a little muscle strength.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, I like that.
That should be in every doctor's office.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't take, I've got, you're looking at my office here. It's like 10 by 10 at the most.
Yeah.
And that's all you need. I could do all that right in a small little closet like I have here.
You don't need much.
No.
So yeah, I mean, I would hope that, one day it might go that route, but I personally would like to, I need to get more involved with that exercise as medicine credential. Are you involved in that?
Not as much as I should be. I did a keynote on that with Stuart Phillips and a couple other people at the ACSM National Conference a couple of years ago. And, I've written for them, but I'm so overwhelmed with time issues that I haven't really done that. It's something I should do, but I'm probably at the end of my career now, so you're gonna have to do it.
I'll pick up for you. I gotta talk to Dr. Salas again too. I've been meaning to.
Great, amazing.
In touch with him.
He was in charge of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that would, I guess, another question would be, let's say that's how do we get people to start, but how do we get them to keep going? I feel like the churn is the biggest thing. You do something for a couple months and then you just disengage. And I think that you had mentioned to me that once your participants started coming back to the lab, they were like, this is so much better. We love this. We miss this. Like, how does that sustained maintenance actually occur?
The people that I work with in personal training are really good people, and they've had clients for 15 or 20 years. I'm serious about that. They don't lose their clients because they're really good, but you have to have a little more money than most people have to do that. So these people have physicians and attorneys and professors
Yep.
and other people like that know the value, and they're time pressured. And they actually, the people I have that I work with typically don't do hour sessions. They do 30 minutes because their people are time pressured too, but they do all strength training. So you can do your cardio on your own. They teach you how to do the cardio. So we're going to do the strength. We're going to do high intensity, boom, boom, boom. And the people love it. Say, I can't really do this on my own. I really need somebody because you push me hard, but I get great results. I once or twice a week, and they stay with them. But most people can't do that. So what we do here is we have small group training, and we have, depending on the COVID restrictions, it was 6, that was 8, now it's up to 10. If I go back, I don't know what's going on with that, but the space restrictions, et cetera. But we have groups that come as a class. Now they train individually. We don't do everything as a class, like, jumping jacks and push-ups. They train. They do the strength training. We have 14 machines, beautiful machines that they go down the line. One is upper body and arms, and one is lower body and core. And boom, boom. And we don't have any trouble. Our people almost all over 50, so they love doing just a single set. And we'll do high intensity with them, but they do basically one set on each machine. Not saying that's the best thing to do, but they love it. They're in, they're out, boom. It works really well. We have stretching. We have stretches on each of the machines, some post-exercise stretches, which in our research has not only improved flexibility, it's enhanced their strength gains, because the two are kind of two sides of the same coin. Ability of a muscle to contract, shorten, contract, and produce force and relax, and lengthen, etc. So anyway, when we reopened, a little bit later than most. Instead of getting 15% back or 25% back, which was what everybody else in our area was getting back, within 2 weeks we had 75% back of our members.
That's awesome.
And it was because they really missed not just our training of them, but they missed their group. It's like, this is, when you're an older person and you don't get out as much, you go to this place and people say it's the friendliest place. It's like there used to be an old show called Cheers. I actually never saw it, but people say this is the Cheers of fitness centers, because everybody comes, everybody knows your name, everybody likes you, everybody gets on, and everybody arguing or fighting or anything like that. And it's just a nice social atmosphere. So we like the small group. You don't have to come with your group, but they miss it. They'll say, if you have a dental appointment or an eye doctor's appointment, you can come to other groups. There's no problem. They'll welcome you, but they get to love that group. These groups have been with us ever since I opened the fitness place. Some of them, the early morning ones, haven't changed in 15 years. 15 years? 12 years. Been 12 or 13 years. And so that's one thing that we like, that social aspect, the consistency. We've pretty much had mostly the same instructors. We've had a couple just retire lately, but they were with us for 12 years, 11 years. One just graduated with us 12. So we try and keep that friendly social atmosphere. It does seem to be important for people that are not motivated athletes like you and I would do it on our own.
Yeah, that is something that I don't know if I'd ever do a study on this, but looking at the self-determination based psychological needs, one of them is relatedness. Do the people around me care about me? The social support, and just seeing, I guess, the turnover rate in gyms, and then also comparing that to are there basic needs met? Do they feel competent? Do they feel like the people in the place actually care about them? I think the environment's huge to keep people engaged with it.
You've done some really important work. As I get older, just to compliment you sincerely about this. When I was younger and working with all the military, every military branch, and the professional football teams and the other things like that, it was all about performance. And if I can get a little better performance, that's great. But now it's like, these aspects. How do you motivate people who need this desperately? Because it really affects not only them and their families, but it affects all of us in the medical expenses and the insurance and wow, we could save so much money, like you said, if we could prevent a lot of these issues that are largely preventable. So
I think you talked to me about this last time. I think people had about three, I think it was maybe three different routines. One of them was a machine-based routine. They were given that at a gym. And I forgot, I don't know if it was your study or some other study, but they were looking at who actually stuck to the routine. And I think the one that you referenced was the one that I think was potentially the easiest. They just ran down a line of machines versus I think it was free weights. Am I getting that correct?
You are amazing. So my my former doctoral student from who taught at UMass Boston for many years, I wish you had had him. He's the best in the world. Dr. Avery Feigenbaum. You may have never heard of him, but if
It's on a lot of papers. Yeah.
yeah,
A lot of ACM papers,
the
ACSM.
best in the world in youth fitness. Used to be just youth strength training. That's all we ever did. Years, 15 years, we did youth strength training studies. He did the studies at my facility, and I worked with him, but I was mostly doing older adults, and he was doing the youth. And I worked with him on a lot of those studies, but eventually I just let him run the studies. He was so good. He just received the highest award you can receive from the NSCA, the Lifetime Achievement Award. He's an amazing guy. He's like you. He's got the big shoulders too. He's a big, strong, strapping guy. But he he lived in the Austin Brighton area when he taught at UMass Boston, and there was an Austin Brighton division of Boston sports clubs. They're a little bit trouble right now because they messed up during COVID, but they were big. And I used to work with Boston Sports Club. I used to go to the headquarters in New York. They had New York, Boston, Washington, Philadelphia. They were a part of TSI, Town Sports International. And they were just on the East Coast in 4 cities, but they were one of the biggest, most successful organizations in revenue and in their training in the United States. They were great. And they came to me one day and said, "Hey, Wayne," see, he worked at Austin Brighton, and they had an Austin Brighton branch. They said, they said, at all of our, facilities, we're having issues with our personal trainers want to do new and different things and a lot of different things, and they don't want people to know what they're doing, so they won't do it on their own. They want to keep their clients, which it's not about that. They're missing the whole boat, as we just talked about. But he said, "Would you do a study for us?" I said, "Our potential members are telling us they just, especially Austin Brighton, it's a fairly well-to-do area.
Yep.
Again, a lot of professors and dentists and chiropractors and things like that, doctors." And he said, "They just want to get in and out and get a good workout for health." And so we said, "Yeah, we'll do a study for it." So we went up to Austin Brighton, and they had two groups. They had a express line, which I think was just 8 machines, 8 knowledge, not the 8 that I would choose, but they were the 8 that they chose. And they said, "We do this, it takes 15 minutes, boom, boom, boom. And we have a person nearby if they need any help. We'll show them how to do it the first time. We don't do a lot of instruction," which was not something I would agree with, but they said they just want to get in and out, boom. And they said, then we have the other personal training, where they're about an hour and they do, multiple sets, a lot of exercises, and they switch things around. He said, "Would you do a study?" I said, "Sure, we'll do a study." So we went up and we tested body comps and blood pressure, things like that. But mostly we were looking at, actually we weren't, or we should have. We're looking at compliance and attendance.
Yeah.
And I hope I remember these correctly, but if I do, the subjects, the participants, that when they came in, they had a choice to join either the express line or the I forget what I call it now, the longer, more complex, higher volume, I guess I call it, the low volume and higher volume program. And if I recall correctly, 2/3, about 66%, chose the express line over 34% that chose the longer duration. Well, I should tell you something right there.
Yeah.
Now, those who completed, it was, I hope I get this right, I think it was 80% completion rate, which is not as high as our completion rate because of the small classes. We usually have a much higher completion rate than that. Well, I shouldn't say much higher. In the diet studies, we get an 85%, but that's because diet studies usually have only a 50% completion, so that's okay. But we usually get about an 85% completion rate. So I think it's still very good, 80%. But those that had they went through with an instructor for the most part and did the higher volume, they had a 65% completion rate. So both ends, you got more people that want to come in and more people that want to stay if it's relatively brief and effective. And it was. When you looked statistically, they were, statistically, to be honest, they both lost about the same amount of fat. But the group that did the short actually gained more lean weight because they trained harder. It's like, okay, I've got one exercise down. It was one set, so I got one set down, 7 to go. I can do this hard.
Yeah.
And the group that, when you first start, I want to do 3 sets or anything or 4 sets, but after a while, it's like, oh my gosh, one set down, I've got 2 to go, and I've got 16 more machines to do, or free weights, whatever. It doesn't matter if it's weights or machines. I do both. I love both. But what am I saying? They had better results, and they had better compliance and completion rates. So what we concluded was, why not start those who want to? Why not have that as an option, at least, to do basically? Oh, I know what I was going to say. Okay, the most important part, Justin, is when we finished and we had our exit interview, and I explained to them how they did on their body comps, their blood pressure, all those things. They then went to one of the chief people from Boston Sports Club, and they wanted to talk them into personal training because that's where they make most of their money. And so I was not supposed to be involved in that, and I wasn't, but I couldn't help it over here. They were right next to me. And I didn't know, this was a blind study. I didn't know who was in which group, okay, until that exit interview. Then I said, which group were you in? And they told me. I said, well, because I needed to know that, at the end, so I could do my analysis. But I didn't know that. I was blind to which group they were in. So it was a fairly good study in that regard. But once they told me, I knew which one. And then they went right from me to the next person. And my big ears, I could hear how many said, yeah, I'd like to try personal training. Well, a majority, I don't know the number, I didn't keep that, wasn't my business. I wish I had, though. A majority of those who did the express line circuit said, yeah, this has been great. I love it. I think I'd like to try personal training. I'm ready to make that move now. Next step. Those that had done the hour-long, high duration, long duration, high volume program, I don't know how many it was, but it wasn't nearly as many. Says, no, I'm good. I think I know what I need to know now. I don't want to do anything different. This is all I can handle. So it was kind of interesting that turned out that way.
That's I definitely think that the person interacts with the routine, and I also think that if you can have an enjoyable experience off the bat with physical activity, whether it's strength training or anything like that, you're going to be much more likely to invest in going further. If you're like, oh, I did well at this, how can I get better, versus this was really hard, I'm just getting by. I think that's interesting how you can set up a routine, because you can motivate a person, but you can also modify the routine to make sure they're more likely to stay engaged. So that would be, what's the routine that best fits a person so that they continue to do it? It definitely sounds like.
You are 100% correct, and I can tell that you have skills in all these areas. I am as creative as a rock. That's why I do research. I can. Someone says, "What about this and this?" Okay, I can figure that out. I can compare that. But to come up with new ideas, like you just came up with that great idea about having an exercise physiologist at every hospital, that's not me. I'm not creative at all. But you are obviously like that. Obviously, I'm more try to be very personable with people, and most of the people like me and I like them, and they stay because they're loyal to me, that type of thing. But the other side of that coin is, you do need some variety. I was a distance runner. I don't know why I was thinking you were a runner. For some reason I thought I was a middle distance runner and a strength trainer. And I can do the same thing. I still do the same routine I did, 40, 50 years ago. I still run in circles the same way. I can do that. But most people, they like variety. And so you can still, if you're smart, you can still do a lot of even high intensity techniques, which I never developed, but I've researched them all. And they all work pretty well in our studies. In fact, we've even written a book on them, if you do them right. That you change things up all the time. You have all kinds of mixes and matches and whatnot. And you also have that connection that I care about you and I'm here to help you, that type of thing. Wow, you have clients for life. And the good part about that is that they do tell other people about you. We've never had to advertise, really.
Yep.
Right now we do for exercise sciences because of COVID, but other than that, we've never had to advertise for our fitness center, anything like that. You know, they just, it's word of mouth. You say, hey, we found a place where people actually care about us, found a place where they'll
Yep.
let us try different things, and found a place that has a general philosophy that exercise can be both time efficient and physiologically and psychologically effective. So that's what we do.
Yeah, yeah. Do you make any specific modifications would you recommend for adults who are older? Is there anything, or you just still treat them as an individual?
Yes, that's a great question.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Um, Back in the 80s, there were three, possibly four places that were doing research on older adults, strength training for older adults. The first and foremost was Tufts University, and they just had medical Frontera, Fiatoni, oh gosh, who else was there? Oh my gosh, wrote the book Biomarkers. He's excellent. He went to Penn State. I'll think of it in a minute. But great exercise physiologists, Miriam Nelson with her studies. They were a little before your time, but they were just the best in the world at working with older adults. And excuse me, down in Maryland, you had another group, Prattley's group, and the others that were in Maryland. They were looking with older adults. And then you had our group at the South Shore YMCA when I was there. We did a ton of research with older adults, thousands of subjects. The others did better research, but we had far more subjects, so we could generalize a lot better. Where they'd have 12 or 20 subjects, we'd have, we'd literally thousands of subjects. And that kind of put strength training for older adults on the map. Now, the fourth one might be down in the state of Florida, where they have so many older adults. Signorelli did a lot of research, so he's still active in doing that research. But at any rate, the number one exercise physiologist at that time, and Bob Salas would tell you this, was Dr. Michael Pollack. He was our number one exercise physiologist. He was known for always working cardiac rehab and cardiovascular fitness. He was the best in the world. He died very young, just before giving a keynote speech at an ACSM conference, which is terrible. He had like a brain aneurysm and died. Oh my gosh, it was just awful. Great guy. But he and I became really good friends because he changed his emphasis from cardio. He did everything he could in cardio to strength training, and he did a lot of research, and he had a lot of good information on strength training. He was at University of Florida at that time, but he was asked to do the guidelines for older adult strength training because of his reputation, and it's well deserved. And he was the best in the world at what he did. But because he was a cardiac person, he said, I think that older adults should do, instead of 8 to 12, like was the recommendation for everybody else, I think they should do 10 to 15 reps just to be on the safe side, because less weight, maybe less risk of injury. Now, we've had no injuries. Most people have no injury. I mean that, and I'm not knocking it. We haven't had injuries, thank God, for as many years as I can remember with people that do what we do. 8 to 12 works just fine. But he said, let's go to 10 to 15. And there was no research to support that. Tufts they just did 8. You got to 9, you went up. They used Kaiser equipment, the air pressure equipment. All right. They would do 4 exercises, 3 sets of 8 reps. University of Maryland used NOS machines, just like we did. They would do 1 set of 8 to 12 reps, just like we did. I forget what they did in Florida. It was similar, but no one was doing 10 to 15. And yet that became the recommendation for older adults. And they, again, I don't blame. Well, we did some research on that, Justin. And there are some good reasons for doing that. When you ask, is there a difference? Here are the reasons. When you do a set to failure, with whether it's 8 or 10 or 12 or 15, your heart rate increases rather predictably and linearly, rep by rep, until it peaks at the last rep, and it usually is about 50% over your resting. So if your resting was say your resting was 70, it'd go up to say 105 or something like that. Okay, about 50%. Now, it happens to go up a little bit each beat. So if you're doing 8 reps and it goes up, say 55 beats, okay? Um, no, I shouldn't. I said that wrong. I said that wrong. Forgive me.
You're okay.
We had 50 beats over resting.
Yeah.
Okay, so if your resting was 70 to go up to 120. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. 50 beats, not 50%. I'll get the percent in a minute. 50 beats. All right. So if you did 8 reps and it went up, say 50 beats, it'd be about six beats per rep. Nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But if you did 15 reps, it would go up about 3 beats per rep.
Oh, interesting.
Right? So it's a little easier on an older person's heart rate response. In the blood pressure, we did several studies on blood pressure, not as many on heart rates, but several on blood pressure. And blood pressure goes up in upper body about 35% over resting by the time you hit your last rep, and then it drops right down. And diastolic actually drops down while you're doing the set because it opens more capillaries. But 35% over resting is nothing.
Yep.
Say your resting is 120, it's going up to 160. With lower body, like leg press, we have so much muscle mass and so much resistance on there. It goes up about 50% over resting. I'm sorry, I meant that 50% here and not where I said it before. But we replicated that study. We had it twice, 50%, boom, boom. And say it's 120, it goes up to 180. Well, ACSM says you're safe as long as you don't go over 250 milliliters mercury. So people say, oh, I shouldn't do, have high blood pressure or whatever, have blood pressure medication. It's no worse than aerobic, because if you get on a cycle and you're on there for not just a minute, doing a set, you're on there for 20, 30, 40 minutes, it goes up 35% over resting and stays there the whole time, your systolic. So I really honestly don't see much difference between older adults and younger or middle-aged adults, because everything's relative. So, well, they're not as strong. Well, of course not. But if they're using 75% of maximum, when you do 10 reps, most people can do 10 reps of most exercises. Squats and leg presses don't work because of Lombard's paradox, but the others do. You can do 10 reps with about 75% of your maximum. Well, if you're you and you're doing leg extensions with 200 pounds, all right, you're using 150. Well, if you're me doing leg extensions with 100 pounds, I'm using 75. It's all relative.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing is, believe it or not, as you get older and you lose fast twitch selectively, but you have a higher percentage now of slow twitch, your muscle endurance, everything decreases, but my muscle endurance decreases slowly.
Yep.
My muscle strength increases rapidly because of those fast twitch.
Yeah, that makes.
But I don't think that you need to make much of a differentiation. Just like I don't think you have to make a differentiation between men and women. There's not the muscle response about the same. Sorry for all the.
No, that makes. I mean, that's kind of confirms what I thought. It's all individual. I mean, the recommendations are there, but yeah, it's all individual too. You can lift this much weight. What percentage of this is that? Then there goes there. I'm curious. I actually want to start talking to more people about physical activity promotion. But how do we? I guess one of the last questions is, how do we actually start to make this more equitable and reach the more vulnerable populations? People that otherwise, like, what needs to change for people that would otherwise have been, I don't know, type 2 diabetics, having high blood pressure, or not even considering going for a walk? How do we, and that's kind of like a loaded question, but how do we change them? Because they're the people that need it the most. Often they're probably the people that can't afford personal trainers or might not have the motivation for it.
I got a couple thoughts on that. Number one is, again, we've done research that showed, and study after study after study, plus all the meta-analysis shows that strength training reduces blood pressure, not just reduces, just as well as cardio, at least circuit type, like we do. We don't go really fast, but they do a circuit. It reduces respiratory. Our studies with HbA1c, reduce HbA1c, blood sugar, certainly. Most studies, not ours, unfortunately, although we saw a reduction but didn't reach statistical significance in increased HDL, decreased LDL. Of course, that's because that study was with diet people who didn't have high cholesterol anyway, maybe, but most studies do show that that's the case. about 20% improvement in both, in most of the meta-analyses of that. And the same thing with just building strength and building bone, all those things. We need to get that information out there. The Wall Street Journal, what's her name, Ross does the fitness articles there, the New York Times, the Boston Globe, whatever,
Yeah.
more of those articles. We also need to get more grants. And my colleague Karen Peterson, I wish was on this because she just did her degree in health promotion science, or what's that called? Wellness informatics or fitness informatics or health informatics, informatics. I'm not even sure I pronounce it, but it's way above me. But there's so many colleges that have majors now in that, which is a much larger umbrella. And a lot of hospitals. She works for South Shore Health, who owns South Shore Hospital. They have the exercise physiologists there doing things of that nature, that they're a part of a bigger team. But she has been so successful in getting grants and grants and grants and grants when she worked at the YMCA, so that people who couldn't afford it, you're diabetic, here, we got a grant, come in, it's free. You have, cardiac issues, we got it. You have arthritis, bingo, you have cancer rehab, etc. Getting grants from the state and talking to the state about, hey, we need to get these people in. It's going to save money in the long run with all the healthcare costs. So those type of things. The other thing, having said that, let me just give a fact. The Dorchester area has kind of a reputation. There's some wealthy people in Dorchester, but most of Dorchester is not, we're not talking Duxbury or Hingham or places like that. Wellesley here. And they have a lot of people that need a lot of help. And it may be the finance, I'm not sure. But over a course of a year, one of the physicians there said, we need to get our people too. They need fitness. I said, yeah, they do. They run one of the big clinics, and they'd send me all these, the medical records, which I really shouldn't even see that, but they said, let's say they sent me 50 people, and I contacted all 50 of those people. I never got one, even with their physician's recommendation, to come to give us a try. So I'm thinking, what is the missing link here? And I honestly don't know. I think the missing link is actually seeing a person like you or like me, who they say, wow, these are normal people. They're not scary people. Yeah. They're not drill sergeants. They actually seem to care about me. They seem to have knowledge about this area. I trust this person. It's not quite like buying used cars. You have to find someone you trust. You're not really buying the car. You're buying the person selling you the car, saying, I think I trust this person. I'm not getting a lemon here. I've only heard that that's good for people that are athletes or weightlifters or, whatever. I think we need to make ourselves more visible and accessible, not just you and me, of course, but other people. Just going to senior centers or to councils on aging or to other places where people who need us congregate, and just give little presentations. The pre-COVID days, I used to do that quite a bit, and we'd pick up a lot of people who would say, oh yeah, can I give it a try? It seems like you really are a nice person and you care about us. And yeah, we do. And our people do. So I don't have an answer for you. I gave you kind of diametrically opposed things, because you think if a physician recommends you, that people would do it, but they don't always even do it that way.
Yeah, it is a complex problem, but we will see.
Justin, 10 times more about this than I do. I have my own little niche here, and you've just done a PhD in this area, and you have a great new job. Congratulations to Brandeis of all places.
We'll have to stay in touch, because it's physical activity for healthy aging. Yeah, awesome. Gotta stay in touch. We should
You've carved out a great niche for yourself. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. We need to go to, I'll show you this guy, but maybe we can meet up at Blue Hills, and we can all go for a walk, take another. Wow. I had to show you him. That's
oh, what a beautiful dog. Cocker Spaniel.
He's a Cocker Spaniel. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Look at those ears.
Yeah, he's actually
honey.
Dealing with ear infection. No. But yeah, he loves Blue Hills, and I know you said you go running there or walking there. So
we hike there every week, my friends, my personal trainer friends. Yeah. Dick, who's he's just so good. He doesn't have your personality. He's nothing like me. He's really low key and quiet, but his people know he cares about them, and he's brief and good and basic, and he has more clients than everybody else at the largest YMCA in the country, Metropolitan YMCA, at least it was a couple of years ago. All the other personal combined, and he's trying to cut back. He's got waiting lists. It's just, he's amazing. Yeah. He's a good hiker. So we go, he used to take his dog. My dog is too skitsy to do that. She's afraid of everything. She's a rescue. She's a yell out. She's a rescue, and she was abused. So she's just afraid she wouldn't make it there. But yeah, we hike. And in the summer, we do a bike first, then we do a shorter hike because we bike and hike. He was a great runner. I was a runner. We don't run too much anymore. It's a little hard when you're our age. I still do, but I do mostly sprints. I do once a week, I go to the track and run, repeat 200s or 100s to try and keep a few fast twitch fibers, but it's not working. Stay young, Justin.
I'm trying.
What's your dog's name?
That's Scout. He's currently sleeping on my backpack now.
Oh, hi, Scout. Love dogs. Oh, thanks for showing me Scout.
Of course. I showed him in all of my job interviews almost. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, congratulations to you. I apologize for being late. I came in, I got overwhelmed. It was just one of those days. I'm only here 2 days a week now, and people came in, they saw me, and they wanted to use this and that, and I said, oh my gosh, I just lost track of the time. So thank you for
all good. Well, I appreciate you being a resource.
Thank you.
Let's stay in touch.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll catch up in person. All right.
You are such a success story. Please keep me apprised of what you're doing.
I will, for sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, Justin.
Bye. Enjoy your day.
You too.